Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our new episode today for Envision Business Talks. Today, we have a very special episode, topic that I feel personally very passionate about disability in the workplace. And joining us today is none other than the amazing Ms. Kerry Gibson, the president of EcoCenturyTechnologies, director of strategic partnership for ZiphyCare, and longtime advocate for diversity and inclusion. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
We also have amazing Hazem Ibrahim, certified translator, interpreter, and reporter, writer at CNBC Arabia, as well as sitting on the Harvard Business Arabic Review Board and being their main translator. Mr. Hazem, how are you today?
Thank you, Nairuz. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Welcome. I just would like to remind our viewer, if you like to post any questions while we're having the conversation, feel free. It's more of a casual conversation, friends talking to each other. So you're very much welcome to post any comments or question you'd like on our social media, be it YouTube or Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere you like. So let's start with the lady. Kerry, being a long-time advocate for diversity and inclusion, women and race have usually taken the spotlight when we mention diversity. Over the years, while we definitely have a lot of ways to go, we have made a lot of progress on those two topics. Do you believe when it comes of today's topic, the disability in the workplace, we have done similar efforts?
I think we have a long way to go, both in the infrastructure of the workplace as well as the culture of the workplace. It's a little difficult to be employed in the profession of your choice when you can't go to work, whether that be the office space itself, the facilities provided there, the technology, depending on the disability of the employee, or perhaps access to transportation or the means to get that support in order to be a productive member of the economy. And so I think we have a long way to go. Disability has been basically the last bastion of bigotry and, where we're trying to overcome stigma and assumptions, a lot of ignorance around those who have disabilities. In many cultures, those with disabilities go unseen, like quite literally. And so quite often I'm interacting with business colleagues who have never met a person of disabilities, and there's a level of fear and awkwardness. And so I think mainstreaming, working towards these goals of full inclusion in the workplace is absolutely essential. There's a need for education about those with disabilities and what that means to employers.
Okay, fabulous. I mean, I know both of you and Hazem. I can say Hazem is a longer musketeer. You have many years that you've really been challenging all the challenges that have been coming along your way. And Kerry, you were at the beginning of your adulthood when you have to do this transition. Can you share with us what has been your motivation and what has been the, if you will, tools that enabled you to successfully make this transition?
Probably resilience and perseverance, and a desire to be productive and be out in the world, making change, making change in myself. I didn't, after my accident, you're right, I was 22 when I was in a car accident. And so, I had a very different life, and I wanted to live as full a life as I had prior to my accident. And, what was it? And not be, stuck in a bubble. I wanted to experience everything that everybody else experienced. What about you, Hazem?
Well, for me, it's a bit different. First of all, I would like to not apologize, but I would like to explain that I have a different look. This is the coronavirus look, 5 months of self-imposed home quarantine. So I usually look a bit different, but I'm keeping this for as a memory for the decades to come. My experience is a bit different than yours in the sense that you were 22 when you acquired your disability, but I was 3 years old. I was too young to remember actually what happened. So you can say I was born with a disability. I was at the age of 3 when I was shot. I was with my father in a car in an accident. It's a long story, but to cut it short, I was shot in the spine. So I had a spinal cord injury at the age of 3. And so I opened my eyes to the world and I was a bit different. So I had always seen myself as someone who is different, not someone who is less. Even as a child, when I look back, and this is my honest feeling, I always thought that I was different. So I never thought I was less. Meaning, when children would look at me and say, oh, pity, and they would say in Arabic, haram, expressing some sadness or some sorrow or some, regret. And I'm like, why are they saying this? I don't have pain. So for me, disability was equivalent to pain. And since I don't have pain, then I am fine. I don't have anything. So I have always grown up thinking that, I am different. However, and this is very important, it's always about how, we know that according to UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, that disability in itself is only a matter of interaction between the impairment you have and the environment. So it's not about what you can do. It's more or less about being able to overcome this inability or disability. So, for example, now I'm 44 and counting. I just realized that I needed to change my glasses. So every day I have to do like this to read. So if I don't have the proper glasses, I'm unable to read. But if I have
Yeah.
the proper glasses, so this is a kind of disability. So for me, it's about the interaction between what you have and the environment, being the physical environment in my case, because I have a physical disability, or attitudes. So two problems I had always faced, which reflected on my character. The fact that people would look at me as being less, which means I had always to prove that I am more, although I always saw myself as different. But seeing yourself is one thing, and then interacting with others who see you. So people would come in the street and give me money in many countries on many, 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 many occasions. I'm not exaggerating. Thinking that I'm a beggar because of stigma. You were referring to stigma. So I am always inclined to say to people, I am not a beggar. I am not less, And also, if you are disabled, for the most part, it depends on the culture. People will think you will know less. So I am always inclined to say, I know more. So that's why I move a lot and I talk a lot since I was a child, even before the accident, but more so after the accident. So I'm always saying indirectly, look, I know a lot and I can do a lot. And this sometimes, there's a fine line between, proving yourself and then becoming too much in the face of others. It's like, okay, we know you know. We know you can. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have to admit, sorry, Kerry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to expand upon that. I find that a lot of people put a lot of value into the worth of like a body parts, right? Like you were saying with your eyes, right? And the same goes with the legs. Just because your legs don't work, what was it? Doesn't make you like half of a person. We aren't valued by our bits and pieces, but our entirety, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I was gonna say, yes, I have to admit that both of you challenged me. So Kerry challenged me once on a race by the lakeshore, and I have to admit it that she really beat me. and I really couldn't cope, if you will, with her speed. Amazing. And Hazem, of course, in any intellectual conversation, I'm always a loser. You always beat me in any topic that we talk about. So it's amazing. And I have to say, what really, I found it an amazing and inspiring thing is for both of you. For the time that I've known you, I was talking about you the other day, and I say, I wish one time I saw you frustrated or upset or sad. Like you always have this abundance, contagious happiness, positive energy. That sometimes I feel very shy in a way when I feel petty about anything. And then, when I sit with you guys or talk to you, you always lift me up. So I have to say it's amazing. And I don't know whatever emotional bank where you are, getting your source of positive energy, but please keep on doing it. And also share with us, do you have any tips to keep you so much positive and motivated all the time?
I think we don't meet enough, or you don't work with me. That's why you have this good feeling.
This is funny.
Of course we have, bad days, I don't want to always put words into Hazam's mouth, but, I mean, everybody has struggles, but at the same time, I mean, we've been through, really rough waters. So kind of like the smaller bumps in the road aren't quite so bad.
I mean, for me, it's about life doesn't go without its challenges. But I hate to say this because I would be really reinforcing the stereotype. But I had been a fighter, So maybe it's a defense mechanism that I have been using. I overdo it sometimes, but I always try to overcome the challenges because that's the only way to move forward. Otherwise, you are faced with too many bumps, and then you have to go on. But
Great.
but let's not let me not overstate this, because I have my bad days and I can be very grumbling, and the rest a lot of people know.
We have to talk to your wife then, and then to get the real picture, I guess.
Absolutely. You will see the other side of me.
Exactly. Hazem, today's talk titled "The Physically Challenging the world," and like what you've mentioned, that you've been a fighter and converting, if you will, these challenges into opportunities. So, other than it being a catchy sentence, I love what it means, because in a lot of cases, we sometimes take the individuals themselves out of the equation when talking about this topic. And we forgot that we are not helping people with disability, but we should be, in a way, empowering them to help themselves, because they are the ones that are challenging the world. So, in your opinion, how important it is for us to understand the difference between helping and empowering?
Okay. This question is to me or Kerry?
It was meant to you, but you can,
Okay.
both of you can
No,
answer.
I'm fine. I think I would like to think of persons with disabilities as us versus them. It's not about them. It's
Mhm.
about us, because we are all disabled in different ways. And this is not just a slogan, it's a reality. WHO, or now I know WHO is for many people some issues
That's
around
our
it.
favorite. Yes, exactly.
And but I have to trust the authorities at these days. And other organizations, they talk about science talks about life expectancy. Now people are living more years, which means you are bound to become disabled sooner than you think, and at a greater degree than you would imagine or hope for, because this is a byproduct of living longer. So basically, we are all going to be disabled in a physical, visible form if we
Yeah.
grow older. But we all have also our own visible and, as Kerry said, invisible disabilities. Our psychological issues. We all do have them. So
Okay.
in a way, first of all, I would like again to say it's about us, not about them. Now, the issue of empowering versus helping. I think it's, empowering is important like it is for other groups in society, but I think also we shouldn't exaggerate this point. I think what I would like to say here is this. I would like to see that more opportunities are being given on equal basis to everybody, so that people can choose for themselves if they want to be successful or not. I mean, successful by whose standards anyway? Because I don't think that anybody with a disability can be a superstar in that sense. So I don't like, for example, in my case, I don't like to be praised for being a superstar, because not every person with disability can do what I am doing, right? But if every person with disability is given the opportunity they deserve, and if they are given the chance to live their potential, then they're going to be able to do what they can do, rather than what society thinks they can do or want them to do. This is very important. So whether it's helping or empowering, of course, empowering versus helping, empowering is more important. However, what matters is giving people the chance. I'll finish this idea by saying this. When I was at the National Council for Disability Affairs in Syria, I was surrounded by 6 deputy ministers, very intelligent people, very powerful people. And they would look at me and say, "Oh, Hazem, you are an exception," whenever they are talking about policies. And I would say, well, I am the exception that proves the rule. Because I'm not an exception because I'm an exception. I'm an exception because I had snatched my opportunities, whether myself or my family. If you give other people's opportunities, I will not be the exception anymore.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
I think it comes down to that discussion between equality and equity, right? They're two very similar but very distinct, distinct things. And sometimes the tools that you give one set of people might have to vary to bring that other group of people to that same level. It doesn't mean you are, what was it? It should be like a going out of your way, it's so much trouble type of situation. It's just different tools. And I mean, we are all very different humans. And, whether that be, physical abilities, intellectual abilities, but those tools will differ from person to person. And it shouldn't be like, Hazam is saying, an us or them thing, universal design enables everyone to access success and
Absolutely.
And I have to say, I'm speaking about the diversity and the power of diversity. So even I didn't mention about our guest speakers today. So we have Kerry joining us from Vancouver, BC. She woke up very early morning to be with us today. Hazem, Syrian, living in Dubai, and have had so many, if you will, milestones to be able to get out of the box in a way, and to be able to achieve whatever he has achieved. Speaking about the power of diversity, Kerry, in your opinion, what is really the difference between diversity and inclusion when it comes to disability?
Well, I mean, the term diversity, is just about, well, I suppose ticking the boxes, right? Is everyone present? I don't mean in a tokenistic sense, but in a giving everybody's voice, bringing everybody's voice to the table. What was it? Inclusion's all about welcoming those voices. Because of course, different values are placed on the worth of individuals. And it was interesting. I was having a discussion with a friend yesterday who I was recording a podcast with, and we were talking about the psychology of being in a wheelchair as a power dynamic, because psychologically being lower down from someone, there's almost this what was it, greater than or less than in the physicality of it, right? So just the mere overcoming, going into a work reception and, being there, what was it? It's if the people in that room are reaching back out and, making way for my presence and making me welcome, that's inclusion, right? Diversity is just having me in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Hazem, giving your background and your extensive experience as a translator and interpreter, I think it is safe to say that you understand the power of communication and conversation. In your opinion, what are we doing wrong when we are talking about disability?
I think Kerry spoke in the beginning about the physical infrastructure, but let me add to that. She hinted to this also, the software, if you like, not just the physical infrastructure, but the mental infrastructure. So the world is changing, definitely. More awareness. We are seeing more awareness around the world. More countries, more organizations are embracing this idea. So it is very important that we have not just the physical infrastructure for persons who have physical disability or hearing. We should also not forget that it's not only people with physical disabilities, but we have a spectrum. So it is important that people understand this world, because again, it's about us, not about them. Okay. And the more information we have, the more we are able to deal with this. And so if you are a company interested in doing diversity stuff, but if you don't read about this, and if you don't do your homework or your due
Yeah.
diligence, you are
Mhm.
going to approach this issue maybe superficially, as opposed to having the right information, and then knowing that if you have a person with disability and you are able to neutralize their disability in the workplace, since this is our main topic, then they are going to be productive, and in this way you will be doing your job properly. So now, communication, you use the word communication, and I do have also communication in my background, in my study in the US. But communication is very important. And why it is important? Because we have an alienating world. So it's a journey that we are all going together in, including persons with disabilities who are disempowered, if you like, partially and to a great extent because of communication, because of how society communicates about disability and how it alienates people with disability. So you can see it's like a triangle in this case. So having two sides out of three will not help. And so communication is very important, and the way to address communication is through knowledge and more awareness and getting the right information from the right people, which is basically people with disabilities themselves. Because we know the famous slogan, nothing about us without us. There's a big ideological debate about this, about real inclusion, real participation, having actual people with disability fighting for their own rights in the right forums, with given the right tools and given the right space in the physical and in the virtual sense, so that they can express their own concerns and they can be at the table and have a say in all the policies that shape our lives, all of us.
Yes, to this point, I always think of Stephen Hawking. And can you imagine the scientific world without his, enormous brain that he was able to express through technology and to enable him to communicate his thoughts and, and wisdom and just all of those contributions to science that he was able to achieve despite what was it despite his physical abilities, that technology was able to empower.
Yes, I love this example. And by the way, I did a 12-minute documentary for CNBC on Stephen Hawking. And you are absolutely, I was just looking back at his book, which appeared after he died. Amazing, he is answering 10 questions on 10 big issues in our universe and our lives. And it's through technology. So imagine, as you said, this guy didn't have the proper technology. We wouldn't have had, all his great achievements. And add to the list Einstein, who is, on the list of autistic
Yeah.
people. So
You're right, and even from our era, if you will, we have the company Brown, Virgin, many examples that we can share that those big entrepreneurs, entrepreneurials that have created great cooperation. Some had ADHD, some were dyslexic, etc. So, as you mentioned, the disability could be physical, could be emotional,
Mental.
exactly. Absolutely, but we can always make the best out of it, as you mentioned. Uh, Kerry, I have recently watched this great TED talk about disability in the workplace, which brought up very interesting point on how we greatly misunderstood this topic for years and continue to do so on how someone with disability will function no differently than any other employee if the employer is not the one disabling them by not creating the flexible work environment. And you've mentioned earlier from your visit to Dubai how impressed you were by the infrastructure and the accessibility. And maybe I'll let you first give us the example that you shared with me earlier when you were comparing, if you will, a developed country versus developing country in terms of your own experience. And maybe after that we can go to talk more about some cases where you found that the disability was more from an employer side because they were not inclusive in terms of creating the right environment.
Yes, my visit to Dubai was very enlightening. The infrastructure there for persons with disabilities is pretty incredible as compared to many other cities I visited. It was, but like I mentioned, it was shocking. I was the only person I saw with a physical disability the entire time I was there. And, I was there to see as much as I possibly could. And, they have this amazing infrastructure, but culturally, it wasn't as welcoming. It was a bit of a give and take. And here in Canada, we're trying to catch up to the infrastructure, and there's a lot of conflict as to, I mean, of course, our land prices. So, for instance, our BC Building Code, what was it, was adjusted so that developers didn't always need to have universal design in their buildings because, of course, that square footage was invaluable. And
Mhm.
so, putting stairs rather than a ramp in was cheaper and allowed them to build, bigger or whatever, right? And but when it comes to employment, there's been a lot of really great research done on how diversity enhances business.
Mhm.
And, so when we look at like the dollars and cents of diversity in the workplace, it is far more valuable to an employer to be an inclusive employer and, hire on merit rather than physicality or gender, race, so on and so forth. In fact, those are benefits. Forbes and Deloitte and many other research organizations have done that math. And I think just that education and that knowledge that, being an inclusive employer and being an inclusive society is far stronger than excluding everybody and keeping them in their pigeonholes.
Absolutely. Um, uh, Hazem, what do you have anything to say about that from your own experience here?
Yes, I mean, I love living in Dubai, and in fact, Dubai is a very okay. It's not perfect, but it's a very nice place for anybody with physical disability, especially the transportation wise. I don't drive a car, mainly for ecological reasons. I didn't like driving in the first place, and then I was convinced I don't need to own a car, at least before I got married. And so I was always, and until now, at least before the pandemic, I was using public transportation. And in Dubai, public transportation is almost 100% accessible, especially metros and buses. So this is very important aspect, because if it wasn't like this, I might not have been able to do what I'm doing now at CNBC for 7.5 years. Also, I work in an accessible building, whereas before in my previous experience, I had issues. So now two things, two very simple but very important things: being in an accessible, physically accessible workplace, and being able to use public transportation. I was able to have this career. But speaking of working and adding value to the workplace, for
Yeah.
example, not in a spirit of boasting, but I work at CNBC for the last 7.5 years. I'm the only interpreter. Okay,
Mhm.
so I've been able alone to handle a very important function without having any colleague. And so this means my reputable TV station, which you know also in outside our sister channels, CNBC Europe and other ones. So they have been relying on me, which means I am a reliable person in that sense. So because the management didn't think of my disability as a problem because it's irrelevant to doing my job in this case, and because of easy easy access, I was able to do my job. And here now, for example, during the pandemic, I have been now at home for 5 months, and I'm able to to do my job from home. If I didn't prove myself in the first place, I wouldn't have been able to stay at home for 5 months and still do my job using an iPad, an iPhone, and a headphone and a microphone. That's it. And I added value in that sense. And also because of deep-seated concerns and fears, ever since I joined, I had always wanted to prove my abilities, and so I am still able to contribute to the content. Something I'm not required to do by contract, but something I
Yeah.
love to do. So in a sense, they don't only get my interpretation services or translation services, but I do other stuff, which was in these stuff have been inspired by the fact that I want to do more because I always wanted to prove myself. So in that sense, this ability had been an added value to my employer.
Yeah, absolutely. The question I'd like to ask you, Hazem, we talked earlier about the commercials, about the, if you will, return on investment, about how much the world is missing in terms of an income if we were more exclusive, inclusive of disability. Can you share with us some of those statistics?
You know, International Labor Organization talks about a big loss. Numbers vary. You will never get an exact number, but you can lose 3 to 6 or even more percent of GDP because of not including persons with disabilities. People with disabilities, again, numbers vary, but you're talking about trillions of dollars of purchasing power. Think of these little examples. If you have a restaurant, and you want to have a party, and you want to invite a grandpa or a grandma. Remember, by society's definition, they are not disabled, right? They are
Yeah.
old people, but technically they are disabled because they use a wheelchair. If you ask them, do you have a family member who is disabled, they will say no, but they do
Mhm.
have somebody in a wheelchair. Now, if you have a party and you want to choose a venue, you will not go to an inaccessible place. So this is just a little example of how businesses are missing out. Now, in a city like Dubai, where almost everything is highly accessible, especially malls and big places, this
Yeah.
is okay. But in other places that are, in the process of developing their infrastructure, this means a lot of loss because you are losing those people who have a purchasing power and their family members. And so, as Kerry said, it really pays to have an inclusive mentality. It's just a matter of thinking the right way. Even in terms of math, even a business case. Forget about human rights case. Forget about, all this nice ideology of including everybody. Just think about it in terms of business if you like.
Exactly. Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, business wise, if you include more people, you have more business. And of course, this is not should not be the main reason. But even if you look at it from that perspective, you lose if you don't include, and you gain more if you include.
Definitely. A lot of businesses really need to look to the bottom line, when valuing. I mean, if you think about it this way as well, for governments, if you have everybody contributing to the economy, then more people are paying taxes. People are healthier because they're being productive, and they have networks and support systems within the workplace. What was it? There's less drain on the healthcare system. They can pay their own bills, so welfare systems aren't as taxed. So I mean, there's layer upon layer of reasons why this makes good sense, makes good business sense, right? Like Hazem said, it doesn't have to be because it's the right thing to do, which it is the right thing to do. But I mean, in the corporate world, people don't always quite think that way. And I think COVID has had a little bit of a silver lining when it comes to remote access to employment. And so for persons with disabilities, being able to work from home in the comfort of their already set up, surroundings, just being able to communicate with the outside world in a normative fashion. I think this paradigm shift to the remote workplace is going to be opening up all sorts of opportunities for persons with disabilities.
Absolutely.
And actually, yeah, that's why. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Lala, please go ahead.
I want to add one thing. This is absolutely true. Now, with this working from home, more businesses who have been thinking about employing persons with disabilities will not think twice. Will actually think twice positively. They will maybe double think about it rather than just be reluctant. But I want to tell you one example, about the difference between working from home and going to the workplace, and also what it means to have an inclusive society. One of the main factors why a lot of people don't go out and work, even though they can work and they have physical disabilities, especially females, one of the main reasons, you know what? Not having accessible toilet.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine that simple, silly thing is depriving millions of people of proper life. Just the fact of a lack of accessible toilet. I cannot, no matter how much I try, stress how important this is. It's killing the lives of millions, hundreds of millions maybe of people around the world. So if we now working from home might be a savior for many people, because they don't have to leave the comfort of their home, which we hope that doesn't have to be the case always, but this is just an example.
Yeah, that is so true. And it was interesting that not too long ago here in Vancouver, where Canada's a developed country and we're forward thinking, blah, 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 blah. And in Vancouver City was implementing public toilets in areas where people would congregate for, community celebrations and so forth. And they had overlooked the fact that people who might want to access these toilets would need the larger. They had put just a standard toilet into these units. And I mean, they were giving all sorts of excuses like, oh, if we put wheelchair accessible toilet in these public spaces, well, the homeless will go in and sleep in there and things like that. And, just outrageous, reasoning, right? It's about, dignity and, and integration into the community. And if we want, the general public to be out and about and participating and spending their dollars in the community, you need to make that community welcoming.
Absolutely, you're right. Hazem, from your experience as if you will, coming back to the Middle East, as the Secretary General of the Syrian National Council of Disability Affairs, can you tell us about the challenges that are evident in the Middle East? And I'm sure we have many.
Of course, this is something, this position I held 8 years ago before I came to Dubai. But I mean, we have plenty. The list is very, very long. starting with attitudes. I think the major obstacle that we can see in many parts of the world, it's attitude. It's the lack of proper resources. It's the lack of policies. These are like the macro level issues or problems. And also the fact that no proper mechanisms are there to deal with all these issues. So people, would like to work, for example, or would like to go and get education, or would like to travel around, but because of the lack of these services, then people are unable to access all these services. So the major problems are, and they are being resolved gradually and slowly, is that governments are realizing that they need to put more resources into all these policies related to health, education, transportation, infrastructure, building codes, welfare systems, especially also employment services. This is very important because many people out there are willing to work, able to work, but there is no agencies or proper mechanisms to link the two together, or at least to prepare the scene, because sometimes you need to do a bit of polishing before the process can go on. And so we like those services. But as I said, the list is very long, and I was in charge of helping implement a national plan, and it was that thick. So you can go on and on and talk about a long list, but also lack of infrastructure. Sometimes because of financial reasons, but a lot of times it's not about financial reasons as much as about proper thinking and proper policies that if taken into account, then there's no need to spend more money on doing the right thing. Actually, a ramp means less of the road, doesn't mean more of the road. So even if you think about it, if you put a 10-year plan, for example, and you say every new road, or every road I fix, or every pavement I fix, I will create a ramp, then you spend less money, because basically you are cutting part of the thing rather than adding to it.
Absolutely. Uh, and, like you mentioned, that there are countless, if you will, initiatives that we can take if we can look into this subject. I have a question for both of you. When we're talking about minorities, so sometimes if we're talking about female, we have found that there are some certain leadership attributes that are very common. Women tend to be inclusive, nurturing, peacemakers when it comes to conflict. With disability, is there any leadership attributes that you have noticed that are different? What could it bring to the table, if you will, when we are more inclusive?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, resilience and problem solving, coping mechanisms, empathy,
Yeah.
being able to, whether that be in a business scenario between colleagues and those nurturing environments, and understanding how to get over rough patches and whatnot, to dealing with your customer and being able to, be that voice or that ear for your customer that understands, okay, how do we get over this difficulty? How do we, make this a situation that, you'll be happy with? And I think there's a lot of value in having those voices within an organization that reflect the community that you are serving.
Great. And at the moment, what is the most important point, in your opinion, for people with disability into the workforce? Is it hiring more people, or creating more awareness and educating, if you will, hiring employers, HR specialist companies to be more able to enable, if you will, people with disability? Which of the 2 points you see more important nowadays, and why?
They aren't more important. They're equally important. We need to do both in tandem. And, because it isn't just about a rah, hire persons with disability. or building the infrastructure. You need to have those two parts working together in synchronicity in order to successfully change the culture of the workplace.
Has do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I agree with Kerry, and I think this pandemic has given rise to this idea of working from home. It has radically changed that concept, and I think we shouldn't over focus on this, but we should use this opportunity. And I was thinking, why not somebody? I mean, this is an idea for free for anybody. Why not create apps or
Yeah,
services, where interested, it's like matchmaking, if you like.
yeah.
Matchmaking, if a company, and I realize many companies and many big corporates are going into that direction, they are convinced that they want to do this, but they are looking for candidates. And it might not be an easy process to find the right candidate to the right job. And
If they
so maybe,
it will be easy. They just us. I'm just kidding. But
no,
actually, I
of
was
course,
going to
of
say what you
course,
were talking earlier, that we would like
this,
to hold this and
yeah.
invite anybody who knows disability talent, companies that are interested in hiring people with disability. If you know any organization that has, database that we can have access to those talents. So we are working on this definitely. But yes, it was just a joke what I mentioned. But
No,
uh,
no,
I'm
you're
on
right.
it,
But thank you. This is a good opportunity. Now, people, I
of
can
course.
see, people are commenting. They had commented on my page earlier on Facebook. I can see comments now
Yeah,
on your. I mean, what Envision Partnership is doing right now, and this is not a free commercial. This is a genuine, grateful. I should be, genuinely grateful. I'm sure Kerry shares that also with me. Is
no, no,
that
we are great.
thank you for doing this, because this is part of the awareness raising process. If people, I'll tell you this example. uh, I work as an interpreter at a TV station, and it's a business. It's a major business. Actually, we are the only business channel in town. So a lot of times, a lot of CEOs and big shots from the corporate world used to come to our studios before the pandemic. And so in the last 7 years, I have met many of them, many big CEOs of big companies, global companies and local companies in the Middle East, you know? And I would sit with them to prepare for the interview. So my disability is irrelevant to the conversation. It's
Mhm.
irrelevant to the job. But
Yeah,
my job is to sit with them, prepare for, I need to understand how, they talk and, their ideas, etc. So in the process, if every one of these people leave the room thinking that, I like this guy, he was
yeah,
doing his job properly. So next time I'm willing to try
yeah,
to give an opportunity to someone else. So the more you have, the more people you have in the workplace, the more examples you have, the good and the bad, because not everybody, I'm not perfect, by the way. I have my own shortcomings. But what I'm saying is, if you give people opportunities, it means they will see good examples, or at least they will see the examples in the proper context, like normal human beings in their context. Then they are willing to give more opportunities to more people in the same workplace, and this will create a contagion effect. It will be
mhm.
contagious. Other people would want to uh, imitate, or would want to
Absolutely.
follow suit and say, they are doing it, why not us?
I know.
And so it
Exactly.
becomes a competition or a race towards a better society for us all.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Maybe we can take some of the audience question now. It's been very interesting conversation, but also I would like to give an opportunity
We
to
want to
our
be inclusive.
exactly. So we have a question: more awareness, but is corporate world doing enough with inclusion? I think we might have touched on that. What do you think? Is the corporate world doing enough?
No. There's always more to do. There are some great leaders in the corporate world who, for instance, KPMG has diversity and inclusion representatives at all its major headquarters. I mean, that's fabulous. That's a great start. Now we need that trickle down process for that acceptance of this notion that this should be a part of corporate society and corporate, the workplace, and hierarchy, hiring hierarchy. That having designated representatives with corporations in the larger sense, to welcome and to seek those talents from persons of of all backgrounds, and so, but that's a difficult thing for smaller companies to access. But there's a great foundation here in Vancouver called the Neil Squire Foundation, and it actually is a matchmaker between persons of disabilities and corporate structures. So there's so they can do the heavy lifting to pair skilled persons of disabilities with appropriate employers.
Fabulous. We will be doing something similar here, and actually, we hope that we will have something to launch very soon. Hazem, we have a question for you. Gina's asking, do you think today any organization has the capability to acquire disabled talents?
I think the answer is yes. I don't want to be harsh on organizations and saying, I mean, I agree with Kerry absolutely 150% that we need more. But also we need to diversify our thinking. It's not only about persons with physical disability. A lot of people with hearing impairments, even people with mental disability, they are able to do great jobs. And it should be beyond the stereotypical thinking. For example, in the old days, they would put somebody with visual impairment to answer phone calls, even if they have a degree in Arabic literature, for example, in some countries. And I don't think that's appropriate. We need to see more people, being hired. But now with technology, actually, I just realized that during the pandemic, that technology, not just working from home, but also the kinds of jobs that are evolving because of that, more reliance on technology. For example, a lot of people with hearing impairment, if you don't need to interface with the customer, and if it's only about doing the job via screen, and you need somebody with sophisticated skills, why not hire somebody, for example, with hearing impairment? So it has to be a proactive thinking also on the part of companies. They have to say, okay, wait a minute, we want to give equal opportunities to people, but they can say, for example, in their ads, persons with the hearing impairments are also welcome to apply. Okay, I know there's big debate about quotas versus equal rights versus this big debate. Some people would say break the barriers, other people would say put quotas in it doesn't matter what kind of legal framework you follow. We need more opportunities to be presented, and nobody will feel bad if we see more persons with disability being employed in positions they deserve, not seeing them overqualified in many instances, working in lower paying and lower jobs than their qualifications simply because they have a disability, when their disability is really irrelevant to the kind of job they are doing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I was actually at an ILO conference just last year, and I was incensed when someone asked the question, oh, we should talk about disabilities and, how we can hire persons of disabilities to simple tasks. And I'm like, I was outraged. I'm like, are you kidding? Right? So what are we, it goes back to that stigma of, and what you had said about, diminishing those with disabilities with a higher skill set. And what we said, like, what are we supposed to be doing, like sorting recycling or something like that, when, we might have like a PhD or some such that, can contribute more greatly to the community.
Some of the questions we've already answered actually during our conversation, but I think we have one more question coming up. Do you see any shift in people's perception and how we interact with physically challenged individuals in the workplace?
I think I see that there is a change. There is more awareness. I have seen. I mean, sometimes it's like watching your beard getting gray. Sometimes if you don't look in the mirror every day, one day you wake up, oh my God, it's all gray. Or because you see it every day, you don't notice the change. It's something like this. So if we take a look from like zoom out a little bit, I think change has happened. It is happening. I am positive, and I think the pandemic has brought us. I mean, luckily, it's not all bad. It has
Yeah.
brought us some changes in attitudes, and I hope that we can capitalize on this. And the short answer is yes. I'm seeing a shift, and I'm happy about this shift. I hope it can get faster. I hope it can be deeper, but we shouldn't be, too tough on ourselves, on others also. We need more positive change, I guess.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
Anything that you would like to add to this?
Sorry, was it Nehru's?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
No, I was just saying if there's anything else that you would like to add to Hazem's point.
No, it was I think he covered it very nicely.
Great. Is there anything that you would like to give us as your final tip, if you will, or insight on this interview?
You start, Kerry.
I think I'd like to, reach out to the corporate community to be open-minded and to do your research on the benefits of inclusion. If you haven't already kind of delved into the opportunities that presents, and the the way it would benefit and strengthen an organization. And too often, persons with disability are dismissed. And when we look at diversity and inclusion, women have been making great strides to come into the workplace. Persons of different backgrounds, and with their skill sets, and people are understanding that those benefits truly strengthen an organization, both within its corporate culture, as well as of course, its bottom line, the fiscal results. But I think we're still working on that shift, and to just start talking to people, and being open to different opportunities for people of all backgrounds, and just concentrate on that merit-based hiring system, and perhaps use the technologies available to do blind hiring, so that that all of that background is taken out of that equation. So it isn't that I'm a woman, or the person with disability, or this and that. It comes down to my actual resume, and my education, and do I actually qualify for this? And then they'll get a surprise in the end if they hire me.
Absolutely, yes. And I can say, I haven't met so many, if you will, qualified people like the two of you, and I know that your diverse skills and capabilities, and what you bring on the table is very, very unique, I have to say. Hazem, any last word you would like to share with us?
Thank you, Nairuz, and I thank Envision Partnership, and through you personally, and through the company, I invite boards and CEOs and executives, senior executives, to research this issue and to think about it for on a weekend for a few hours, and take whatever decision they think is appropriate, because I think at that level a lot of changes could happen, and it could be contagious and could trickle down within the same company and to other companies also.
Thank you so much. So for our viewers, if you still have any other questions, please post them, and we will make sure that Kerry and Hazem can get back to you with their insights. So finally, I would like to thank you so much for joining us today. This entire business talk has been amazing, to say the least, and I'm sure our viewers feel the same. Today, I would like to ask everyone who watched us today to join our campaign using the hashtag not a checkbox. And whether it's something you have gained today or your own story or experience or insight, please share it with us and we'll be more than happy to continue the conversation. You can contact us on social media to learn what else you can do. And thank you so much all for joining, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for having us, Neeruz.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you, Hazem.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.